Hi everyone, it's Jan with What You Make It, and I am back for our second project for World Card Making Day. When I was telling you we were going to do this day, I showed you this little stamp that I had gotten. It is a memory box stamp, and it's called Nutty Squirrel. And he's just really cute, and I love that he comes with a second little stamp on here that is an acorn. So I made use of that. Today's the technique that I'm going to be showing you particularly in this is paper piecing. You could certainly color this little squirrel up with some Copics or colored markers or colored pencils, but I thought it would be fun to do some paper piecing and make him a little bit of a featured item on here. So in order to get all the way through all the steps of this, I'm going to speed up a little bit and narrate. I'm going to show you a few of the products that I've used. I used the Lily Bee Designs paper, both the Memorandum and the Harvest Market. Those had a couple of great things in it. I also used some of the Tim Holtz Craft Core. I cut the Polaroid out of that and then did some embossing on that. It is great for being able to get that dimensional effect that you want with a little distressing. So I love using that. I used this embossing folder by Doris. It was a wood grain. To make the trees, I used a paper tray ink set that is called Trendy Treetops. I used the die to cut out the trunk of the tree, and I also used the die that had the little heart in it to cut out of the felt. For the squirrel, I did paper piecing, and I used a paper, it was Paris & Company, it's from My Mind's Eye, and you might not think that it would be a great pattern to use for this piecing, but I found that by turning it over and looking at the B sides, they're usually not as busy and had some real great neutral colors. So if you're looking for that right thing to do paper piecing with, look at some of the B sides of your papers. It might be exactly what you need. So I selected several pieces here, and I always start my paper piecing by selecting what my base is going to be on, and I chose this dark chocolate, and I am going to do my stamping. I do all of my stamping and then I start my cutting. I used Memento Rich Cocoa because I was going to be using some Copics to do some shading. When I do paper piecing, I feel like it ends up being a little undimensional or non-dimensional, and so I like to add some shading. So I stamped my squirrel, and then I went on to stamp all of the other pieces that I was going to use on the other parts of him. Now that diamond pattern really was kind of surprising. I used that for the nuts and for his little belly. So when it comes time to put him together, I just start at the bottom and work my way up. I use the base and build the pieces up on top of it with that little polka dot for his, I don't know if he had pants on or what. Then a little light beige here for his tail, and I'm going to use some Copics later to add a little swirl to that. But just piece by piece, I built him up. Got that little acorn in there and had tiny little piece of paper for the top of the acorn. This is one of those projects I totally think a little guy like this, for him to be a great focal image, it's worth doing the paper piecing. Now here I am showing you that I used a sanding block, and when you are doing this, when you've embossed some of that craft core paper, you want to use a flat surface and some sandpaper. To create my background for my scene, I used some Stormy Sky Distress ink on some book paper, and I did that so that I could kind of create a bit of a mottled effect by using the flicking technique with some water. Distress ink reacts with water, and I think it gave it a nice little additional element there. Just going to put the Polaroid down using some paper glue, some quick drying paper glue. When you have a dimensional embossed item like that, you'll probably want to use something that will make sure and give you a good adhesion. I tore the book paper out. Book paper tends to tear really well against a strong edge like that, the craft core paper, so I used that, gave it a nice little dimensional, and it's time to start putting everything together. Now I put my tree down and I decided I wanted to do a little stitching. You could do hand stitching. I did machine stitching, and then I wanted to put a little distress ink on the edge of my label just to make it pop off of the page. And to put the tree trunk down, I used a little tacky glue, fabric tack on the upper part, and then just my normal paper glue on the bottom. That makes sure that it sticks well to each of those parts. And now we're just going to kind of put it together. Got everything with the adhesive that I was going to use on the back of it, and I added this little strip of orange because the treetop was orange. I had the heart that is orange, and I needed that third element to go in there. Just going to slide this label back in there. But that's kind of a good rule of design. When you have an element that is as strong as that orange is, you want to make sure that you have 3 of it. Now, not everybody loves their handwriting. I didn't have a stamp that said "I'm nuts about you," and I knew that was kind of where I was going to put the nuts. So I just used a pencil, and I find that if you write a little slower, you can get a little bit nicer look to it. But if you're using a pencil, you can erase and start again, and just go ahead and use it as your guide to use your pen. If you're comfortable with your handwriting, obviously you don't need to do that step, but I wanted to do all my writing before I added my dimensional elements there. And then I use a white eraser to get rid of the pencil marks. If you use a pink eraser, I think you sometimes will get a little bit of that pink left behind. So now I've added my third little orange element there, and it was time to put my little acorns in the grouping there. I did 3 of them. I paper pieced them as well, and the bottom 2 I'm putting down with some glue, and the third one I'm going to pop up on a little bit of a dimensional there. I just trimmed the edge just to give it a little pop in there. Could not do this without my tweezers. I just could not. Adding some dimensionals to the back of the little squirrel, and going to put some finishing touches with my Copics. Now I used E71 just to add a little bit of swoosh to his tail, but everything else I shaded with warm grays, warm W3 and W1 to kind of blend it out. And anywhere that there'd be a little shading, kind of where his tail is back behind his body, and then I just blended it out with the W1 just to make it a little more subtle. Put it on the top of my card base, and I was done. We are on to our next project. Thanks for being with me. I hope you are having some fun with your own card making day, and I'll be back to see you soon.